being here. So let's see who's in the house. So we've got Inda, we've got Financial Freedom. Owen.
Hello.
Owen is here. There's Tori. There's Kate. There's Queenie. Mary, Paul, Julia, Gary, Derek, Caroline, Goon. I like it. Gary, Jaden, Skilled Carer. Very lovely to see you all. And John, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We've got Lee Motif. And yeah, really exciting. We're so excited to do this workshop with you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's so good to be here.
Yes. So we just wanted to start with just asking everybody where you're from. So write to us in the chat. Tell us where you're from. I'm personally in Sydney. Owen and Kate, where are you guys from?
Melbourne at the moment, but I think Owen's on the road.
Yes, I am on the road indeed. I hail from Melbourne, but I'm in Sydney, and I did see a comment from Derek that said, "How was the coffee?" Derek, I can confirm the coffee in Sydney from Marlowe's was delicious. So thank you for asking.
Oh, I love it. And we've got someone called Sydney from Sydney. I love that. Very easy to remember. And Olivia from Sydney, Diana from Sydney, Alice from Perth, and Fire Junkie from Newcastle. Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Very cool.
Le Motif is from Ecuador, but in Melbourne, living in Melbourne. Wow.
Oh,
welcome to Melbourne.
Very cool. I love that. Bendigo with Paul. Very cool. So excited for everyone to be here tonight. So just wanted to introduce the speakers. So there's me. Hello, I'm Queenie. I'm a personal finance content creator, educator. And we also have Rask. Owen, sorry, I keep calling you Rask sometimes in my head because that's his name, like last name. But yeah, Owen on the call.
Hello. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for having us, Queenie.
Thank you so much for being on the call. And Owen is the founder of Rask. And we also have Kate on the call as well.
Hello, everyone. I co-host the Australian Finance podcast with Owen, and I've been working with Queenie behind the scenes to put her new course together, which we'll talk about a little bit at the end of tonight's webinar. But I'm excited to talk investing, especially on a Tuesday night.
What else is there to do?
Very true. Thank you all for joining. Yes, I know it's probably not the most exciting Tuesday night plans, but you know what? We've got a really good workshop planned. I'm actually quite excited because we tried to make it as engaging and informative as we could. So yeah, even though it's investing related, we'll make it fun. Fun. Oh, okay. So today we'll go through how to save and budget your income, tips on starting a side hustle, generating income from ETFs and shares, and also touch on investing in property. So are you excited? Is everyone excited? In the chat, let us know. Send us some love. Yay.
I like it. And I think Tuesday night should be talking about investing, Queenie. This is fun. This is the good stuff.
Yes, it is. It is. And it can be really scary and daunting, but don't worry, we'll take you through it today. And you'll soon realize, if you haven't already started investing, that it's not actually as scary as, we make it out to be. Okay, so before we get into the workshop, Owen has a little disclaimer to give to our viewers.
Yeah, I get the extra special job. The most important part. So that's really important that everyone knows on the show tonight. And if you watch this back on replay, that any of the information that we deliver tonight is limited to general information. Because we don't know your personal circumstances, we can't take that into account when you ask a question. So we will have time for questions, which is probably my favorite part. But just know that we can only offer generalized financial advice here in Australia. I know it sounds like a really weird thing if you're overseas, but it's just a protection for you and for us to let you know that even if we do answer your question, we don't know your situation. So you should speak to a financial advisor before you act on the information. But that's about it. That's the rest of the disclaimers there. You can read more on the Rask website as well.
Love it. Really, really good.
Favorite
Nailed
part of
it.
my week, Queenie. I love the disclaimer slide, and everyone just says, "Oh God, I just can't believe how good that disclaimer was." So, yeah, if that's this good, what's the rest of the chat like? You know?
No, I promise it gets better. We promise it gets better. But you did a really good job, Owen. So thank you for reading it out. So, Kate, on to you for the budgeting section.
Yeah, well, budgeting doesn't sound that exciting, but one of the most important things before you're starting investing is really knowing about the money coming into and out of your bank account. Because although you can start investing with many micro investing and brokerage apps from even $1 or $5 nowadays, you do need to have that $1 or $5 to get started. So it's important to think about what's the difference between my income and my expenses. And a few things, like I've been trying to get on top of my budget and my expenses a bit more in the recent months, because I did find my food costs were blowing out of control. And yes, I can blame some of that on inflation and the fact that the supermarket is jacking up prices on things because the whole supply chain is becoming a bit more expensive. But I also did let my spending get a bit out of control over the past year. So Queenie, on the next slide, we have a few different just images of examples that you can use to go through your budgeting. So one of the most important parts and the hardest part to do at the start is actually just going through all of your spending. And you can do it the old school way, just printing out or digitally looking at all of your transactions, maybe the last 3 to 6 months. So that can be pretty overwhelming, but it's an important starting point. Or you could use Excel to categorize it, or even a budgeting tool. And a lot of the banks now are adding technology in so you can get on top of your spending and you can really see what categories all of your expenses are going into. And from there, you can really see where does your spending fall into? Because one of the big things that we talk about a lot is knowing your income sources. So you might have your 9-to-5 paycheck, you might have a side hustle income source, you might have some interest on your bank account. Some bank accounts are paying pretty good interest rates at the moment. I saw 5% from ING recently. And then also breaking down your fixed expenses. So knowing what you're having to spend money on. So all of that compulsory stuff like rent or mortgages or car insurance or your water bills. So knowing what they are, and also splitting out your variable expenses. So the nights out with friends, the new jumper, maybe going out for lunch at work. So breaking all of those down so you know what these 3 big parts of your finances are, because what we really want is to increase the gap between our income and our expenses. And so we talk about a lot of this in the course and our other budgeting course we do, but having an awareness of this is a really good starting point for when you want to start investing, because you want to know exactly how much you have left over at the end of the month to get to the fun stuff. And we'll talk about in this webinar, I know Queenie's got a few slides put aside for how to invest and what are the different types of things you can invest in, and just some of these bread and butter basics. And I've seen someone mention emergency fund in the chat. And that's another really important thing we talk about before investing, is having that money. We might call it the F-off fund, because having 3 to 6 months of your basic living expenses put aside in a high interest savings account that's there for anything you need. Like you might have a last minute emergency flight to see family, someone's unwell, you need to take some time off work. Because when we're investing, and our philosophy, and I know Queenie has a similar philosophy, is that we want to invest our money for a long period of time. So if anything goes wrong in our lives, we want to be able to use that emergency fund and not be forced to sell our investments. But I think they were the main things we wanted to chat about budgeting. There's a lot more information in the course, so we might jump to I don't know what's next, Queenie. Investing?
Yeah. We also wanted to ask, and let us know in the chat, when was the last time you reviewed your expenses? Let us know. Maybe we'll read out a few answers, because it's good to do this regularly. But yeah, we're just curious. Do you remember the last time you reviewed it? Let us know in the chat. And were there any surprises the last time you reviewed it? I think we all have a few stories here. I remember my first time that I reviewed my expenses, I saw that I spent $200 on a night out just on drinks. It was crazy. I was like, how did I spend $200? It was a bit shocking. So yeah, definitely if you have only just reviewed your expenses, try not to blame or shame yourself if you did overspend some months, because it's always a work in progress. Does anyone else have any, funny stories or a bit tragic stories from reviewing expenses, Kate?
Tragic stories. Well, I sort of set the rule a few years ago to not say no when I wanted to buy a new book. So there's probably been a few $1,000s of books being purchased in the last few years, especially during lockdown. But I wouldn't say that's tragic because I knew I wanted to spend money on books and put money aside in my budget for books. So it was intentional spending, I'd say. But yeah, I probably could cut down on that.
Oh, yeah. Books, I mean, at least I guess the way you justify it is education, right?
They weren't all finance.
And Julia says she constantly reviews her expenses, which is really good. Caroline says 6 weeks ago. That's really good. Hayden reviews them every month, which is amazing. Ira's still working on tracking them, but that's good that you already know that. So, already in such a better position than not knowing to track it. And 3 months ago, Jessie constantly, Sally fortnightly. This is really good. Everyone's on top of it. That's nailing it. That's so good. Owen, do you have any stories from last time you reviewed your expenses, and do you remember when it was?
Yeah, actually, wasn't that. I don't have any fun answers, but I'm actually loving these answers and the responses in the chat because it reminds me that so many people are on top of it, which is just like it leaves me optimistic. So if you've reviewed your finances recently, that's the hardest thing to do. There's some research that suggests people would rather walk in front of a crowd naked than share their finances. So if you're doing it, you're doing one of the hardest things, one of the most daunting things. But for me, I did it recently, beginning of the year. I sat down and redid the budget, or we did the budget, my partner and I. And what we found was that we had like a bunch of slippage. So there was like little things that had like crept in, like subscriptions, or little things that had like crept in, or prices had gone up because of inflation, which we'll talk to tonight. The prices of some things went up like 10 or 20%, and we didn't even really pay attention. But you do enough of those little things, and by the end of the year, they're big things. And so we just had to make some changes there, which is really cool.
Oh, yeah, the slippage, that's a big one. And also sometimes, when you haven't reviewed your fixed expenses in a while, and then those prices raise, and maybe that electricity provider you're with is no longer competitive, or things like that, the loyalty tax. Good to review.
Rion mentioned in the comment the Apple mobile subscriptions, and they always get me because you sign up for a 30-day free trial and it goes for your Apple iCloud account, and then you don't really know when it renews, so you have to go into your subscriptions in your settings to cancel those things. I mean, they always catch me out.
Same.
Wow. Yeah, definitely. And that's a good one to mention. I actually went through it today, and there was a subscription in there that I didn't even realize I was paying for. And I was like, wow, it's so important. So I canceled it. But yeah, definitely go through it because sometimes you forget to cancel those free trials. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Dr. Van reviewed my expenses at the start of the year. No major surprises, although I already knew I was spending way too much on Uber Eats. I feel like we've all been there, especially during COVID. So it's at least we know, Abby just reviewed our expenses last weekend. It was for January to March. That's really, really good. I'm really proud. This is amazing. Okay, so something else that's really important is to spend where your values are. So if your spending at the moment isn't quite aligned to where you would like to be in the future, don't worry, because we can always change that and move some things around. What we can do is perhaps even create an ideal budget. So maybe this is what our budget looks like at the moment, but maybe in the future we'd like it to look a little bit differently. Maybe spending less in some areas and more in some other areas that we'd like to improve. So yeah, that's just something to keep in mind when you're reviewing your budget. Anything else to add on that chapter before we move on? By the way,
probably just add on the spending where your values are. It can be hard at the start to actually know where your values are and what you want to spend on. And one of the activities that we've talked about on the podcast before is writing down the 10 things you spend the most money on, which is something you'll identify once you've done a spending review, because right now I probably couldn't tell you off the top of my head what are the 10 things I spend the most money on. So once you've done that review of about 3 months of your spending, you can write down that list, and then write down the list of like the 10 things you enjoy and get the most value from, especially when it comes to your spending. And there's going to be some non-negotiables there, like rent and water, but see if there's any ways you can better align those two lists. Because sometimes you might realize you really want to spend more on holidays, but you don't really care if you live in a share house or a 1-bedroom studio apartment. So you could reduce money on your cost of living and spend more on travel and holidays and experiences. So it's a way you might still be spending the same amount of money, but you can dial it down in one area and dial it up in another area. So that's potentially one way to look at it.
Oh, I love it. Yay, that's really good. Really good points. Okay, so we've got another challenge. So let us know in the chat, how many streams of income do you think the average millionaire has? Let us know. So we've got 3, 5, or 7. What do you think the answer is? I'll wait for the responses to come through. There's a bit of a lag.
Game show drum roll music, Queenie.
Yeah, we do. We need drum roll. Okay, Hayden says 7. Rion says 3. Caroline says 7. Michelle, 7. Derek, 7. Iris, 3.
I like how no one said 1.
Well, we've got the 3 options. Oh, but yeah, it could be 1, 2, 3. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, most people just think, right, that it's 1.
That's
but
true.
we didn't make that. We didn't make that an option. So
that's
why?
True.
Maybe that's a hint. Maybe
yeah,
that's a hint.
Maybe. Yeah. John, 7. Henry, 7. Paul, 7. Abby, 7 or more. Very good answers. I love it. Okay, so should we do the reveal? Drum roll, everyone. What could it be? Ta-da! It's 7. So congratulations to everyone that got the 7. And this was from a study from the IRS, which is the tax office in the US. They actually did a study of millionaires' tax returns. And what they found was most millionaires actually have 7 or more streams of income, which is quite different from, the other tax returns that they studied. So I guess what we can gather from this study is that if we want to become millionaires, if we want to build our wealth, it's a good idea to diversify our income streams and to build more than one income stream, just like the millionaires in their tax returns. So yeah, very interesting study. Do you have any thoughts on these studies?
When you came up with this, because you obviously shared this with us when you were filming for the course, Queenie, and Kate and I, this is a secret, after you'd left, we were like, 7. Let's find the research paper where she got that from. And I was kind of surprised, right? Like we do, like all 3 of us are fortunate that we deal with people who have been successful investors, and I'm still surprised that this is the average, right? Like it seems pretty high. And one of the questions that we had from someone in the office today was, like, they were trying to count on their hands what are like the 7 sources of income, which I think is one of your slides that is upcoming. Because I know a lot of people get confused. They're like, okay, you got your job, you got your, maybe you got some dividends that you might get from some shares, or maybe you have a second job or something like that. But I think that's the kind of it where people are like, oh, wow, I didn't know there were so many different ways to make income.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Interesting. What did you think, Kate?
I probably had an inkling, because I have a couple of different sources of income already, because I have been investing for quite a number of years, and I sort of noticed that I'd been paid interest on my bank accounts. So the probably the one that stood out to me, which is number 7, which you'll see on the next slide, but that it did sort of raise that point. When we see successful entrepreneurs and business owners in the US, they've often got lots of different businesses happening. And I know Owen used the example last year when we spoke at FinFest of some of the biggest names that are multi-millionaires, billionaires, in the world, like Oprah Winfrey, and they have multiple businesses and things that they own, and they have employees, and they make money from lots of different things, whether it's their book deal, their TV show, they own part of a business they did a brand deal with. So some very clever people have worked out well before us that diversifying your income sources does help a lot, as well as diversifying your investments, which we'll talk about as well.
Yeah. Oh, it's so interesting. Hey, it's definitely a lot, but I'm sure we'll see in the next slide that it's all stuff that we already know, and it's good to just keep it top of mind so that we can, build in more income streams into our life. So let us know in the chat what you thought of this stat about millionaires. Did you think 7 was a lot? Did it make sense to you? Yeah, let us know in the chat what your thoughts were. I'll just wait for the chat to generate.
Yeah, it's interesting, Queenie, because I'm sure we'll get to this, but a lot of people don't think that the small things that they do can become really meaningful, and I think that's the part where a lot of people miss, is that it might start small. So these other sources of passive income, which you might already be benefiting from, you don't realize because it's so small. But just imagine what that could become after 2 years, 10 years, or whatever. If you take that longer time frame, yeah.
Very true. Yeah, so the more the merrier, says Goon. I like that. Very nice. Jesse seems very far out of reach. We'll see in the next slide. It's actually probably stuff you already know about. So let's get into the next slide. So what are these different income streams? Because 7 is a lot. So what they studied in the tax returns is these were some of the most common income streams that these millionaires had. So the first one is earned income. So this is income that you can earn from a job. So wages, salaries, working part-time, full-time, casually in a job. So you essentially go to work, you do your job, and then you earn income. The second one is capital gains from appreciated assets. So that could be assets in shares, ETFs, property. Basically, it's the difference between the price that you buy an asset for and the price that you sell it for. So let's say, for example, you purchase a share for $100 and then you hold it for a few years and it's worth $150. Basically, that $50 difference from 100 to 150, that's your capital gains. So the millionaires are making money from that, a lot of them. Dividend income, so that's another form of income you can get from shares and ETFs. Interest payments, like Kate mentioned, so bank accounts. We probably already often have a bank account, a high interest savings account. So if you have a high interest savings account and you're already earning interest on your savings, well, you pretty much already have another stream of income. So it's really good. And other ways that you can make money from interest payments include things like bonds. And that's when you essentially lend out money to the government or corporations. That's another form of an investment. There's also rental income on property. There's also business income, like Owen mentioned. And then there's also royalties and selling the rights of something that you've created. So let's say you create a new font and you publish it on the internet and people download that font, they would pay you royalties for using that font. Or let's say you create a song for people to use, you could sell the rights for your song and then earn royalties every time somebody plays that song or uses that song. So yeah, what do you have any other streams of income? Let us know in the chat.
Gary said he already has 5.
That's awesome.
I saw this thing the other day, Queenie, where like there's a list of like 30 things, and it was like things that you would know about if you were in your 30s, and the number that you tick off is like your score.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you have numbers 1 to 7, how many of these things do you tick off? I'm going to say, well, I've got earned income because I have a salary. The capital gains from things. I don't typically sell my investments once I buy them, but you could say that I do. Dividend income, yes. Interest from cash in the bank, absolutely. My emergency fund earns interest. I don't have a rental property, so I can't say yes to that one. I have business income, I guess, but it's like a bit different for me. and I don't sell rights or royalties. So I've got like 4 or 5, which is pretty cool. What about you guys?
Awesome. That's so good. Yeah, I have earned income, capital gains, dividends. I don't have royalties and selling rights. And yeah, that's the one I don't really have. And I also don't really sell my assets really. I usually just buy and hold, but yeah, very interesting. And let us know in the chat how many of these income streams you already have, or are there any income streams that you've seen in this slide that you're like, oh, maybe I could do that. Maybe that's a good idea. Let us know in the chat, or if there's any that are missing here that you think would be good to mention as well. Let us know in the chat. Oh, Michelle, I make my extra money from doing surveys and focus groups. That's a really good side hustle. I love that. Derek says he's on 4. Julia says, my husband and I have 5 of these. That's really, really good. Tori says that they have 3, which is really, really good. That's awesome. Financial freedom, 3 income streams, 1, 3, and 4. That's really good. Eon said they could tick off 4. That's really, really good. I'm so happy. And yeah, there you go. If you have a bank account and you're earning interest in your bank account, I think some of us may not even know that's another income stream. But yeah, it's really cool. We're already on our way to becoming a millionaire with multiple streams. What about you, Kate?
Oh, I think I have about 5 of these. It depends on year to year, but the definitely the interest payment, the ATO, the tax office in Australia, want to know about that one as an income stream, and I think all of them really. But it's really interesting how these things can start small. So one of my friends invested in her first ETF and got her first ETF dividend payment. So the ETF paid some money out to her bank account, and it was only a few dollars, and she kind of wasn't very excited about this because what was she supposed? She couldn't even buy a coffee, but I thought it was worth celebrating, and I wanted her to make a big deal out of it because this was the very start of her investing journey, and this showed that she was receiving an income stream and she was investing, and although it only started with $3, one day it could be thousands of dollars if she keeps going on this journey. And I think it's important to know that these can start really small, but as you keep adding to your portfolio over 10, 20, 30 years, these will grow into quite large income streams if you keep working at it. And that's what we're talking about in this session.
Can I just jump in, Queenie?
Yeah.
So Sally's just put in the chat, what would you classify passive income? I've got a really cheeky definition for this. I'd call it magic, because a lot of people when they first discover this concept, like I remember this happened for me quite a few years ago, is it's like free money. It literally feels like free money. It feels like it appears in your bank account. Now, some of it isn't. Some of it you have to work for, like it's a second job or it's a side hustle that might, you still have to maybe package up the thing that you sell on eBay or on Facebook Marketplace or something. But for the most part, it seems like magic, and it seems like there's just this old saying about habits. Kate's going to hate me for saying this, but it's the chains of habits are too light to be felt until they're too heavy to be broken. And what that means is that the practice of saving doesn't feel like you're getting anywhere, but then one day you kind of wake up and you realize, wow, like this is actually really meaningful. And it's probably like when your dividend investments start to go from a few dollars, as Kate was just saying, to maybe it's hundreds of dollars at a time. And then you start to realize and you're like, wow, this is actually a thing. And then it becomes thousands of dollars. And then you're like, this is a holiday. Like this is a holiday if I want to do that, or it's a reinvestment. And then it's, onwards and upwards from there. And so I think, I can't remember if it was Jesse before said it was pretty small, but yeah, I just want to say, I think of it like magic because you don't have to work for a lot of it, and it kind of just happens in the background, which is so cool.
Yeah, very true. It is honestly like magic when that starts happening. And even if it is a few dollars at the beginning, it's just so cool that, you didn't actually have to sell your time to earn that money. So yeah, it's really awesome. I love that. I love that analogy and that explanation, Owen. Yeah, so we wanted to throw it over to the audience and ask you, does anyone have a side hustle that they're working on or a side business? Because as Kate mentioned, a lot of these income streams, they can seem really daunting, like business income. When I think business, I think like massive corporation and like starting a huge business with all these people. But a business really could start in your bedroom. Like I started multiple businesses from home. Actually, I have a little funny story here. My very first business was actually flipping items that I found on the street. So for example, this was back when I just moved out of home. I was a uni student. I didn't have a lot of money. So what I would do to earn some extra money was I would have a look on the streets, and, a lot of people would leave furniture, mattresses and things like that before the council pickup days. So I would go around on the streets, eye out a few things that I thought would be good to sell, and pretty much pick them up, take them home, and then resell them on Facebook Marketplace. I remember the very first thing that I sold was a mattress for $50, and that was pretty cool because I had to actually, Pablo and I carried this mattress back to our place. It was quite heavy and it was a very hot day, so we're carrying this mattress. But I was like, hey, look at that, $50, from a side hustle. And then I think the next thing that we sold was an exercise bike. That one took a little bit longer to sell. That one sold for about $90, but it took quite a while. So that was a small side hustle that we started at the beginning. And there are actually businesses that took that to the next level, and they really started to, go to different op shops or thrift stores and, resell clothing items on places like Depop or Facebook Marketplace. So even if it just starts out as a small thing, you really could turn it into something bigger. I also started making YouTube videos in my bedroom with my very first investment in the YouTube channel was a lav mic that I bought for $90, and the rest of the equipment I literally just filmed on my iPhone. And that was our very first investment in the business, and now I was able to leave my full-time job by pursuing that and making more videos. So even if it starts out as something small, something that doesn't make very much money, just keep at it, and eventually, you never know, it could replace your income or add in a nice extra income stream. So let's have a look at the people's answers, see what people said. Jaden, I'm a content creator doing both food and drink reviews and fashion reviews as a side hustle. It's really cool. Maddie says, I'm hoping to discover my side hustle this year. That's so exciting. Hopefully we can give you some ideas. Do you have any ideas of something that you'd like to do, by the way, Maddie? Let us know. And Michelle, I have pet care services business, pet sitting, dog walking, grooming, house sitting, etc. That's so good, especially if you love animals. It's a really good side hustle, and it's such a good thing to do. Like, people obviously need that service, so it's great to be able to make money from a service that helps people. Fire Junkie, no side hustle here yet. Too much analysis paralysis and haven't started anything. I was thinking Amazon FBA, starting a niche blog, but don't know where to start. Well, that's okay. Like, it's good that you're thinking, researching different options, and you could always try something out. And even if it doesn't work, switch it up later. I actually started, like I said, the business where we were looking for furniture in the street. Another one was a false eyelashes business. I sold like eyelashes online. To be honest, it didn't make a lot of money, so we ended up stopping that business. But do you have any stories, Owen, Kate, about side hustles?
One that really stuck in my head from a listener in our podcast community recently was someone that was in mounting TV brackets and installing TVs for people and doing IKEA setup services, because I recently paid for someone else to set up my IKEA bookshelves because it wasn't worth having a fight with someone about it. So there are definitely things, even asking your friends and family, what are the kind of things that they're paying for? Are they paying for someone to help with their garden or their lawn? Well, that might be an opportunity in your community to either help someone out or find a side hustle opportunity there, or looking at a site like Airtasker and seeing, is there a specific niche in your community that seems to have a lot of jobs for offer, and potentially doing a letterbox drop with that same offer if you have skills in that area.
Oh, there are so many good ones. I can see some here, like Alice even said that Scott, who's listening with Alice, says, we sell pre-loved designer clothing and accessory imports from Japan, which is really cool. Jono Ra says, I've been selling plants on Marketplace. I grow, propagate my plants, grow the cuttings, and sell them once they're taken. I grow and sell fruit and veg plants from my scraps or seeds from the food I eat. It's so good. It's like, these are like, if you just think of some of the ideas of like reduce, reuse, and recycle, that's like the 3 R's of sustainability. There's actually opportunities in that too. Like, how do you reduce waste? Or maybe you can help someone else who doesn't have the time or something like that. How do you recycle time or a product, as Queenie was saying before? There's so many different things, which is really cool. For me personally, growing up when I was a kid, talk about side hustles. When I was at school, I grew up on a flower farm. It wasn't as glamorous as it sounds, but I just used to go and get some cuttings from the plants and then go to the tourist area and just sell my flowers that I'd put in like little posies and stuff. And it's only on a weekend. It was cash money though, Queenie, so it was really good. No tax paid on my behalf. Hope the ATO is not watching, but it was really good fun. And I was like, some of the days were tough, but I was also very nervous about selling something. I always thought that, like, how could someone value something like this? Like, how could they take it from me? It's like that classic imposter syndrome. And it took me a while to get over that. But then I realized how cool it was, and I could make money, and then I could go spend that on video games. I wasn't investing at like 12 or 13, but that was my first experimentation with side hustles. And to your point, I'll finally tack something on the end here, is that maybe you try something and it doesn't succeed. Maybe you need to start just to fail and then realize that the other thing that you were doing is better. And you won't ever find out unless you give it a crack.
Yeah. Oh, I love that story. And it's such a lovely message. I think it's so true. I think that sometimes there are some things that you can only really know until you start and give it a go, right? And be kind to yourself, because, we all try things that don't work. But I think the most important thing is that we're actually trying and we're actually giving stuff a go. And I think that, even if something fails, you can still pat yourself in the back for trying. I know it's a bit cheesy, but it's true. Even if something doesn't work out, like my eyelashes business, I think we ended up, to be honest, spending more money than we were really making. So we closed that down. But the skills that I learned from that are really invaluable. So even though maybe it wasn't the best investment from time or money or best thing to do, I learned so much. So yeah, it's so exciting. And Eon says, my 14-year-old is a fantastic digital graphic artist who takes commissions for work, not quite a side hustle. But hey, I think that's awesome. And it definitely is a side hustle, freelance work for sure. And Abby says, not yet, still trying to find time between the 9 to 5 and household duties. I'm sure, hopefully, maybe when the schedule clears up a bit. And Sally says, Shally says, I create classes on Skillshare and get royalties for the viewers. That's really cool. Really, really good ideas for side hustles. I love it. Anything to add, Kate?
I think there's a lot of ideas here. We've spoken about a few before on the finance podcast because our community have so many better ideas than us, but definitely the plant propagating. I've heard that one, setting up furniture. Someone was even going out and doing the trampoline installation because people would get these trampolines delivered and need them installed, and they were quite heavy and hard to put together. So the opportunities are endless. I think it's just being a bit creative and also keeping in mind the side hustle could just be for a season. It doesn't need to be an ongoing thing. You could just say, I'm going to do this thing on the side or take on some extra shifts at work for 3 to 6 months to pay off debt, to get my emergency fund sorted, to get a little bit of a buffer so I can take that first step on my investing journey, because I am struggling right now to find much of a gap between what's coming into my bank account each month and what's going out. So just finding ways to get a little bit of cash to kickstart your finance journey, and side hustles can be a great way to explore that.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Really good points. So this slide I thought is good to put in here. If you are thinking of starting a side hustle or eventually want to create a business out of it, this is a really cool concept. It's called Ikigai. It's a Japanese concept. And basically what it is it's basically when you are able to find something that you really love, that's the first circle, something that the world needs, that's the second circle, something that you can be paid for, and something that you're good at. So when all of these circles kind of combine in the middle, that is your ikigai. And an ikigai, it's a really good thing because if you are doing something that you love, something that the world needs, something that you can be paid for, and something that you're good at, it really helps. It can help drive you because, yeah, essentially you're able to make money from what you love, and you also have a bit of a sense of, I don't know, a bit of a sense of like mission that you're actually doing something to help the world. So that's definitely something to keep in mind if you're looking to start a side hustle or a side business. Some things can just be for the money, like what I was doing, picking up things off the street, selling it on Facebook Marketplace. I guess you could say it was something that the world needed and something I could be paid for, but it definitely wasn't something I was super passionate about. But I think that if you can find something that you really, really believe in, something that you can really do to help the world and strive in that worthy cause and also make money from it, I think that's, yeah, ideally something that you might want to explore a little bit more. Maybe it takes a little bit of reflection. Yeah. And okay, Big Mac challenge. This is a fun one. So, Owen, do you want to give us the Big Mac challenge?
Yeah, so many of you will probably know where we're going with this if you've read a little bit of finance theory. But in the chat, can you just guess what you think would be the most expensive, least expensive, and in between of these Big Macs? So obviously you can get a Big Mac from in the world. Explain why this is an important measure of what we're going to talk to tonight. But which one do you think is the cheapest? So imagine they were all in the same currency. So imagine they're all like in US dollars, but you could buy a Big Mac in Australia, one in Lebanon, and one in Singapore. Which one would be the most expensive? And just while everyone's getting their answers in the chat, I do indeed also love that chart for Ikigai there. I think Kate was maybe the first one that introduced me to that. But it's really good if you're one of those people that are like me a lot of the time and you're stuck on first base, you don't know how to, or you start getting to first base, you don't know which side hustle would work for you. Just go through each of those circles on the outside and tell us, or just keep it notes to yourself, like what are the things that you love doing, and just list all of those things, like list 10 things and then list all the things you could get paid for and so on and so forth. Okay, so we've got some things here. So this is all just in one currency, Owen, which you've put in. Abby, you've said you think the Australian Big Mac is the most expensive. Oh, interesting. Julia said 3, 2, and 1. So you're saying as in 3 would be Singapore. Dr. Van has said cheapest equals Lebanon, most expensive equals Australia. Queenie's saying, Queenie's in the chat, which I think maybe Pablo is saying. I feel like Pablo knows the answers and he's sitting back there. Hayden says Australia most expensive, Lebanon cheapest. Finally, Keith said Singapore because of the import taxes, etc. Well, Queenie, can we go to the next slide? All will be revealed.
Drum roll.
Drum roll. Here we go. Okay, what have we got? And it looks like Singapore is the cheapest at $4.24. In the middle, we've got Australia. Thank you. $4.63 for a Big Mac. And this is obviously in US dollars. So if you're like me and you're thinking, can I go get a Big Mac for $4.63? This is in US dollars. So it's more like $7 or so here. But finally, we have Lebanon as the most expensive at $5.08. Queenie, I know you wanted to add something on this because in the next slide, actually, it will probably show us this. But congrats to everyone that got this. But it's explained by this next slide, which is really, I mean, we'll explain what inflation and things like that are in just a minute. But Queenie, maybe can you just explain a little bit about like why Lebanon as a country for Big Macs went from one of the cheaper ones to one of the expensive?
Yeah. Oh, this is so interesting. And it is very interesting. So essentially the Big Mac Index. It's a fun way to explain inflation because everybody knows McDonald's and it's in so many countries across the world. It should essentially be a similar price to make a Big Mac because it's similar ingredients. So people like to use that as an inflation or like basically a currency indicator just to see which countries are more expensive and whatnot. And the reason why Lebanon jumped up so much, it actually went from being in the cheaper range into being in the top 10 most expensive Big Macs in the world. And it's because of their inflation rate. So if you have a look at this graph on the right-hand side, you can see that Lebanon's inflation rate was quite consistent, low, and then it really, really just has started to jump up a lot in the past couple of years. And that is also reflected in the Big Mac prices, as we can see. So not only does inflation influence the price of Big Macs, but it can also be other things like the cost of living, currency exchange rates, the purchasing power of the local population. So you'll notice if you actually have a look at the Big Mac index and the most expensive Big Macs in the world, it would be a lot of those countries that have, very high cost of living, strong purchasing power, quite high wages for the local population. So yeah, very interesting. Has this surprised anyone in the chat? And what are your thoughts, Owen and Kate?
I think it has surprised a few people. It definitely surprised me, to be honest. I thought it would be cheaper if we're measuring it in US dollars. I thought it'd be cheaper. So there was a comment from Goon that says local food in Lebanon, I would think be cheaper than at the other two countries. I would think that too. So what you're basically saying there is, Goon, that in Lebanon itself, the price of a Big Mac must be very expensive relative to local foods, which would be, I'd imagine that would be true. I don't know for sure, but I'm just speculating that it would be very, very expensive for people to buy a Big Mac.
Well, the price of everything in Lebanon has really jumped up in the last few years because of inflation. Like everything is like skyrocketed. Yeah, right. So kind of similar to, I think, some other countries in the past. Zimbabwe went through a lot of like hyperinflation. It's essentially what has happened to Lebanon. That's why the prices are really high. But they have started to go back down a bit in Lebanon, which is good. But yeah, it's quite scary because imagine the price of a Big Mac or like everything in your whole life just going up that much because of hyperinflation. It's actually quite scary and definitely feel for people in Lebanon. So yeah.
Well, the next slide kind of talks to that a little bit, Queenie.
Oh, yes. So it's not just Lebanon, and every country goes through inflation. And as we know, the inflation rate has gone up quite a lot in the past couple of years. In general, the central banks like to keep it at around 2% per year. But as we can see, it has gone up quite a lot over the past couple of years, even into 9%, 8%, and like we saw in Lebanon, sometimes even in the double digits, and triple digits, which is quite scary. So that's why it is important to, basically keep in mind that our money, while it can buy, as much as it can today, it might not be able to buy as much as we can right now in the future because of inflation. So yeah, maybe we could go through the next slide. Oh, and also wanted to mention that this inflation rate graph is in Australia. So these are the inflation rates in Australia. So you can see it hovers around 2% to 0%. And then, it's gone up quite a lot in the past couple of years.
So if you're wondering why everything's gone up at the supermarket, there's your answer.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, so inflation in our everyday life. Who remembers when a cup of coffee cost $3? Do you remember that?
I do. Now it's a lot more though, Queenie.
It is. Yeah. So now in the past, we were paying about $3 for a cup of coffee. Today, we might pay $5 for a cup of coffee. And who knows when in the future, but we might be having to pay $10 for a cup of coffee, which is a little bit scary. But don't worry, because there are some things that we can do in the next couple of slides, which we can walk you through. So yeah, let's see what people are saying. So Emilda says, I'm from Zimbabwe. Oh, sorry to hear about the hyperinflation. Hopefully it's all settled down and hope everything's good for you and your community. Tori, hyperinflation, that sounds terrifying. Yeah, it really is quite scary. So yeah, sending love to Lebanon. And Rion, I remember $2 coffees. I also remember $2 coffees as well. Eon, I'm old enough to remember that. Yes. Rion, 2006. Goon says it's still $1 at 7-Eleven. It's very true.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I remember when coal service stations had them for 30 cents. That was pretty cool.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. Yeah. So, what can we do to beat inflation? Let's take it over to the audience. Give us your answers. What are some things that we can do to beat inflation? And Kate, Owen, maybe you could answer this question as well, or we could wait for some answers.
Yeah, I know we were talking about it recently on the podcast about some of the things like investing in your career to make sure that you are able to get the next job and the next job, and making sure your career is essentially recession proof by upskilling. There's obviously the budgeting side and maybe reducing your spending in the areas you can, but also thinking about investing, because we can put our money in the bank account, we can earn an interest rate, but if we're investing, we're also investing in companies that are growing over time, or at least that's the hope. And I know we want to make sure we have some time to talk about investing in different asset classes, so I'll leave it to talk about what's in the comments for now.
Yeah. Oh, great answers. I love it. So Belinda says invest. Very good answer. Dr. Van says, I brew my coffee at home and bring it to work in a travel cup. 30 cents a cup. Really savvy. I love it. Rian, so it's hard to stop spending. It really is. Yeah, we do have to spend money. It's just a fact of life, unfortunately. Jaden, save more money. Michelle, invest. Julia, stop spending. Eon, yeah, Iris, invest in assets. I love it. I love it. Okay, so what can we do? Let's go into the next slide. Investing. Okay, is this a bit hard to read, or can everyone see? Should I zoom in a bit?
Yeah, maybe if you can zoom in a bit, Queenie.
Yeah, okay, let me see.
Or we can just explain it.
Yeah, we can explain it. Kate, Owen, do you want to explain?
Yeah, sure.
See?
So maybe if we can go to that little returns box in the bottom right corner there, Queenie.
Yes. Okay, yes, I like that.
So what this slide shows you, and this is a slide that really caught me off guard for a long time, which is that it just basically shows you the returns of different types of investments over time. And you can see, like, if you go to the very right-hand side of the table and you look over 20 years, you can see Australian shares returned on average, this is not every year, 8.2% per year, and in international shares, which was just below that, 7.8%. 6.2%, then 8%, then 4% for Australian bonds. We don't really need to talk about right now. We'll cover that in a minute. And these are like some of the major building blocks of investing. Now, if you think that, let's just do some really simple maths. Let's say that inflation was like 3% a year, maybe 4%. If you'd invested in any one of those first three things, your investment would have done better than inflation, right? That's if you stayed invested the whole time. But if you kept your money, I don't know, say in cash, which is right down the bottom there, you would have only just done better than inflation, which is shown as CPI on this chart here. But after you take tax, because you pay tax on the interest that you earn in a bank account in Australia, you would have been close to like even with inflation. And that's even when inflation's been really low. So now that inflation is really high, people who have their money in the bank just earning interest are actually probably going backwards. You might not think it because you're getting an interest payment, but unless you can put your money to work for the long term or hope that inflation goes down, which it might, and you can still earn interest, which you could, you just got to be really mindful that you might not actually be growing wealthier in purchasing power. You might actually be going backwards. And I think that's what a lot of people don't really understand, because they don't really understand what inflation is. And inflation is basically the cost of things. And basically what I mean is to say is that unless your money is going up faster than that, then you could be going backwards. And fortunately, a lot of people maybe on tonight's call will know that you can get pay rises, which helps with some of this. Pay rises is a really good thing if you can negotiate a pay rise with your employer. But for the long term, I think, the proof is kind of in the pudding here. We don't know for sure what the future will hold. So past performance isn't always indicative of future performance. But I'm personally quite confident that over the next 20 years, that if I'm going to plan to retire, I want to be investing. That's basically it. And Kate's just put a link in the chat to the Vanguard chart where this comes from, so you can keep up to date. And I'd bookmark if I were you, so that we can talk about the different things. Maybe in one of the next slides, Queenie, where we talk about the different things that you can invest in. Maybe I'm happy just to quickly field this one, which is just showing you the different types of building blocks that go into an investing portfolio. So it might sound really daunting, but we've already talked about kind of shares and ETFs. ETFs cover all of these different things, by the way. So you can get, share ETFs, you can get bond ETFs, you can get cash ETFs. You can even get some ETFs that invest in property, not actual property itself, but like property companies and things like that. And so these are all the different things. We call them asset classes in finance, but they're really just investment types. So different types of things that you can invest in. I don't know about you, Queenie, but I invest in all of them actually. When I say invest I only own, like I've got a mortgage on my property. I don't own an investment property, but if you counted that as like part of my wealth, then I do it all. And I think that's something that people should think about too, doing it all.
Yeah. And something we like to remind people is that most of you probably have superannuation if you're in Australia.
Yes,
that's the money that
Kate.
The government wants you putting aside for your retirement, and your employer's putting some away for you each year. But most people's portfolios in their superannuation, so any superannuation provider has a range of different portfolios, and you'll see words like conservative, balanced, and growth, and they have a mixture of all these different asset classes. They might look slightly different to what you'd expect. Alternative investments might be investing in something strange like water rights, and property might be an office building in London, but they have a assortment of all different investment types put together to form a portfolio for you that's hopefully going to be invested for 20, 30, 40 years. So most of us already are invested in these in a way, even though we might not be able to touch them physically.
Oh, I love it. Really good. Really good. And making money from investments?
Yes. So in terms of making money from investments, the real basic things are, and I'll just be quick, and Kate can fill in on any blanks that I miss. But some people say like it's shares or property. We kind of think that it's shares and property. And Financial Freedom just put in the chat, does property also include REITs, which stands for Real Estate Investment Trust? If that sounds confusing, all it is like investing in property, but via your shares account. It's just on the stock exchange, and it's a type of, I think Barefoot Investor talked about it in his book, and many other investors talk about these. But basically from shares, you can earn dividends, which are just like direct deposits into your nominated bank account every 3 or 6 or 12 months. You can also earn a profit if you sell for more than you paid. And then in property, if you do have an investment property, you obviously earn income from people that pay rent. I think there was a good comment earlier on when we're talking about the passive income sources, and someone said that they rent out a room. So they own a home and they rent out rooms. And that's actually a source of property income. And so that's one way you can benefit. So yeah, there are many ways to make money from investing, but basically it all boils down to the income that you receive and any capital growth or the value of the thing going up. And that's, at the end of the day, that's all you should probably focus on, but you shouldn't like focus on one and forget the other.
Very well said. I love it. And have you invested yet? Let us know in the chat if you are already investing, or if you're yet to invest yet, just let us know. And we are we're going to do a Q&A, but we are going to talk a bit about the course that we've launched, that Rask and I have launched. So if you'd like to stay with that, we would really appreciate it. And if not, all good, we understand. But yeah, let us know in the chat. Have you invested yet? And yeah, let us know.
I feel like a lot of people might be scared, Queenie, like in terms of investing right now.
Oh,
like a
yeah.
lot of people think like inflation's really high, or maybe I need to spend money on my rent or my mortgage, which is totally understandable.
It's true. I thought you meant scared of like us, and I was like, oh no, I hope they're not scared.
hopefully not scared of us.
Say if they're investing. I love it. Okay.
No.
So Eon, I invest ETFs across a bunch of asset classes. Derek, yes, ETFs. Vicky, yes, ETFs. Paul, shares for now, maybe property. Some type down the road. Nice. Exciting. Well, that's really cool. Good to see that some of you are already investing. Michelle, shares and ETFs. Love it. Jesse, not yet. Terrified to lose all my money. Honestly, we've all been there. I feel like, it's very common to be scared about investing. So definitely don't feel like you're alone. It's very normal because there are so many scary things in the news, scary stories. So yeah. Yeah, wow. Really cool.
Everyone's already done something, it seems. This is great. For those of you that haven't though, yeah. I mean, you don't need to risk it all, right?
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
that's one of the things. And yeah, I just say you can just invest a small amount to start with.
Exactly. You can invest from $5, and yeah, that's why we wanted to go into a bit more of our course. So Rask and I have launched a course. It's a beginner investing course. There's also going to be a complimentary advanced investing workshop. So if you purchase it in the next 48 hours, there'll be a more advanced workshop 2 weeks after 2 weeks after this workshop. So yeah, if you'd like to do that, you can. I can also send out the link to the course in an email. But yeah, the price is $99 and goes through all of the basics of investing. Anything to add, Owen, Kate?
I just say the link is in the show notes. So if anyone wants to jump into the YouTube description, there's a link there that goes to the course and you can find out more about it. But maybe Kate or Queenie, I'll ask you guys, because you work so hard on the course, who did you have in mind when you created it? Like, who should take the course, I guess is the question. Either of you, maybe both of you will have an opinion on that.
Yeah, I think the person working with Queenie on this course, in the back of my mind is there are so many people I know in my community, in Queenie's community, and we've talked about it quite a bit, who really want to invest but are sitting on the fence because they think they need more money, they need to know more, they need to do a finance degree, they need to be an expert in everything to do with investing, or they need a lot of money before getting started. And the thing I really want to get across to people, and I know Queenie does too, is that you can start really small. Just because you have $10,000 doesn't mean you need to start with all $10,000. You can just start with $5. And in the course, we go through some micro investing apps and brokerage apps where you can actually start with $1 to $5. So you can start small, put your foot into the water before diving in, as they'd say. And also there's so many barriers that don't exist with investing anymore, but the media makes it seem like they do. Maybe friends and family make it seem like they do. And a lot of us have experiences with our finances, with our friends and family, that put us off investing. And maybe these are things that we should question, some of those assumptions. We should question the assumption that investing's like gambling. We should question the assumption that we're going to lose all of our money, because there's a lot of evidence. Maybe look at the Vanguard charts, look at your super funds track record over 20 years, that isn't true. And you can invest over a long period of time, small bits on a regular basis, and actually build wealth. But you've got to give it time. It's not an overnight thing. And if you approach investing with an overnight mindset, that's often where the trouble starts to begin. So thinking of how can I take a step in the right direction, and whether it's by taking this course or by reading some of the books or by listening to a podcast, how can you take a step today to improve your financial future? And just thinking, what is the smallest step I can do in the right direction? I don't need to make a grand gesture with my finances, just small bits, lots of times. What about you, Queenie?
Oh, I love that. That was so well explained. Yeah, so the people that we had in mind for this course was, people that want to start investing, but they're not quite sure. And this course basically consolidates so much information whereas usually you'd have to go, looking at budgeting, looking at investing, looking at tracking shares, looking at capital gains, looking at, so many different things going in so many different places. We've essentially consolidated it into the one place. The chapters are really easy and bite-sized. You'll be able to tick them off really quickly. And very easy and accessible. We do go through lots of examples, lots of analogies. The Big Mac index is in there, and lots of pictures. So it also suits visual learners as well. So, I love this, Owen. Yeah, going through a bit of the course already.
Yeah, so it's all online. You can take it at any time. You can come back to it. There's heaps of videos, PDFs, like spreadsheet, and it kind of covers everything. So super excited to launch this, Queenie. And I know you've been working on it with Kate for a very long time. So I just think like the more people that can get exposure to something that is kind of like concise and helps guide people, the better. The number of people that we have that in our community that kind of get overwhelmed. Like even Kate and I have done like 300-400 podcasts, just the two of us. And then I know, Queenie, you've got so many videos and you answer so many questions, but like, how do you bring that all together in one thing that people can follow and they can trust that it's going to help guide them and take that first step? Well, that's what this course is for. So it's really cool. And I can see some questions have come through too. There was a question that came through is this for core members? This is from Goon. Goon, this one's not for core members. So this is one of our premium courses. You will know, Goon, that at Rask, most of our courses started as free. And then we've partnered with great content creators like Queenie here to offer courses like this at scale, which is just awesome. And the way we monetize the business, like for all of us, is actually to launch courses like this. So this one's not free, but it's good enough that it's worth the $99. I can tell you that much. So that's great. And I saw a question in here. I think it was from Owen about trying to get your partner involved in finance in some way. And so you've said, if there are any tricks? I think trying to trick someone, Owen, I know what you're trying to do, and you don't mean it this way, but I think if you try to trick someone into learning about finance, it's probably not the right way to go about it. But for my part, what I would say is try to find something that makes it seem less daunting. Try and teach your partner or try and educate your partner in a way that doesn't seem like it's finance. So there are some great podcasts that do this. And indeed, Queenie, like so many people follow Queenie for this, Owen, because they don't feel like they're necessarily learning about like the really nitty gritty of like finance and like from a textbook. It's actually like real world stuff. And so the more of that you can get your partner exposed to, the better she will be placed in terms of being able to receive it. Because if you try and educate on this level and they're down here, it's just never going to work. So you've got to kind of go down there and say, well, how can I get you across to my side? And then we'll build you up. And I think that's what's kind of worked for me. I don't know, ladies, if you have any suggestions.
I think the biggest thing I see for getting friends and family interested who previously haven't been, I mean, I've had some family that have not been interested in their finances for a very long time. And I don't think any amount of sort of feeding information and podcasts will change the way they view that. And all I can be in that situation is just they know I'm there if they want to ask the question. But in terms of friends that are somewhat interested but are really nervous or new to having conversations about money, it's more of just meeting them where they're at. And so maybe they really want to travel overseas next year, and that's a good entry point to start talking about, okay, how budgeting and goals, and how could we structure it so that you can save up for that trip, and how can I be the person to support you in the way that you need supporting on this goal. And so they're kind of good ways to get into that conversation about money. I'm not sure if it's been 23 years, maybe that might not be the right approach, but I think just meeting friends and family where they're at the level that they want to talk about money is good, and not just jumping into investing if that's not where their head's at.
Yeah, and I think
Absolutely.
also even we also talk about this in the course as well, but limiting beliefs, that's something that I think a lot of us face around money. So it may be some beliefs or stories that we tell ourselves from childhood that money is evil, money is bad, I can't have money. And those sorts of things we may not realize, but they actually permeate our life and may affect our finances later on in life if we don't go back and address those limiting beliefs, which are trying to stop us and hold us back from earning more money and trying to hold us back from building building financial well-being and financial freedom. So I would also, maybe think about being open with each other, transparent about potential limiting beliefs because we all have them. It's definitely, yeah. So don't feel like you're alone if you have them. We all definitely do.
One of the things I was reminded of, and I was just looking through the course then, Queenie, when you're saying that, is the next question that people have once they get interested in investing. It's like bolts. It's kind of like, oh, I want to get investing. I'm over that hurdle. But then how do I actually do it? And I'm still so surprised to this day how many, and there's a few comments in the chat about this, how many people, or at least in our industry, how many finance professionals don't tell people, like, okay, here's how you actually just sit down and invest, and here's how you actually buy shares for the first time. And the reason that they don't do that is they're so scared to say, like, finance people are so scared to say it. Whereas in the course, you actually use the two examples where you go through and you show people how to, like, log into the account, what it actually looks like to buy shares, what it looks like to build a watch list, and do all these types of things. And just like that, like it's that type of, I guess, confidence building that we're trying to bring with this course. Is like, here's like all of the information you could get in the media or in the world on the internet, and we're going to just push you straight through to the things that really matter. And that's why these courses are so good for like a grounding to get people started. And so that's why I'm super excited about this. But we do have to, I've got to admit, guys, we do have to save a bit of our secret sauce for the next webinar, which will be in 2 weeks from today for anyone that takes part in the course, because well, we can't give away all of our trade secrets tonight, can we? Well, maybe we can answer 1 or 2 more questions, guys, if that's okay with you guys. So there are a few harder questions here. There's one from Dr. Van, which was that are actively managed funds worth considering? Now, we've probably all got a different view on this, but just before I put it to the ladies, so just for people that don't know what Dr. Van is asking, there are basically 2 ways that you can invest your money. Say, for example, in an ETF, you can invest in an ETF that just follows what the stock market does, or you can invest in another one where a person, a professional is picking individual stocks to buy, hopefully to buy a low, and maybe they sell high, and so on and so forth. Now, the evidence seems to suggest that it is safer for the long term to go with index funds rather than actively managed funds. But I think maybe Kay, real quick to you, what would you say to something like this?
So I do invest in an actively managed fund. So that's where I'm paying a higher management fee for a team of analysts to research the companies, to meet the management team, to go out and do site visits. But I would say that's only a small part of my portfolio. So I do have a core portfolio. So maybe 80% of my money is tied up in a diversified portfolio of ETFs. And then around the outside, what we call the satellite approach, where I've got some active managed funds, I've got some individual companies that I've researched and chosen, and a few that have slipped in that I have not researched. So I wouldn't recommend that approach, but I think most of us do have a go with 1 or 2 companies in our portfolio. But I think the thing to be mindful of, if you do invest in active managed funds, you need to also be active in your investment there. You need to be reviewing their fund manager reports. You need to be keeping on top of, are they outperforming the benchmark? Are they having a challenging time going to the shareholder meetings they have and things like that? So I just say it's probably not something a brand new investor needs to start with. There's a lot of basic building blocks, you can start building your portfolio. We talked about ETFs, because you don't need to make things overcomplicated, especially at the beginning. There's a lot of different financial products that'll have expensive fees, 1%, 2%, 3% per year, or even a fixed fee, and it'll make you feel like you have to go to the next level with your investments when you actually can keep things simple and perform really well over the long term. So I just keep that in the back of your mind, that investing doesn't have to be complicated. You can have a simple, low-cost approach, and it actually performs very well over time. And sometimes the more complicated the investment strategy or the higher returns they're promising you don't always turn out to be the best investment options.
Maybe that's a really good answer, Kate. Really good answer. It's a very technical one. But Queenie, maybe can I just ask you one question, which a lot of people do think about, which is how did you for your own thing, how did you make the decision of should you invest in ETFs or should you invest in individual shares?
I think I did a lot of research into past performance, like you said, Owen, and also having a look at basically what I like to do now with my portfolio is a core and satellite portfolio. So I have my core, which are ETFs, and then I have a few satellite investments, which are basically maybe a little bit more higher risk investments because it suits my risk profile. So that way I can still kind of invest in the safe stuff, the bread and butter of my portfolio, the ETFs, but still have a few fun ones in there every now and again. So that could be something worth looking into, a core or satellite portfolio, and then working out a strategy from there. Yeah. What about you, Kate and Owen?
Yeah, well, I think we're all singing from the same song sheet tonight because I use the same approach. And after many years studying some of the world's best investors, and definitely here in Australia, I've determined that this is both using the core and satellite approach, Queenie, is not just a super effective thing to do from a financial perspective, but it's also a really good way to kind of allow myself to be creative and take more risk, as you said, while also focusing on the core portfolio, the boring stuff, the really simple stuff that anyone can do at any time. They just need to know what to do, how to do it. Because I know that that's going to create a lot of my wealth over time, not the fun stuff. The fun stuff isn't the stuff that makes people wealthy, but it can send people broke. It's more the boring stuff that goes in the core, the center of the portfolio. So that's where I've been spending a lot of my time. And I dare say Kate's the same, even though she did mention that other thing that she's been investing in recently. And just quickly here, you can see in the course, Queenie goes into depth about different investment platforms, about what to do once you actually start investing, how do you track your performance, managing your taxes, and all those types of things, which again might seem well, this isn't the sexy part of investing, but it is probably the most important part. So those are the types of things that you get in the course where it goes beyond just the real high level stuff. But yeah, I think that's really all we've got time for. I think we promised an hour-long webinar, and we've continued through to about an hour and a half, which is great. It's we could talk investing all night, but we should probably let everyone go on with their evening. If you are interested in taking part in the course, as I said, links in the show notes. Queenie, what else would you want to add or leave people with tonight?
Just thank you so much for coming, and I really appreciate it. It's just been amazing chatting with you both. Owen, Kate, thank you so much. Thank you for working with me on this course. I'm so excited that it's live, and thank you everyone for watching. Let us know in the chat if there's anything interesting that you learned today, and yeah, just loved it.
Yeah, it was so much fun. So thank you for allowing us to take part and do this with you, Queenie. We're super fans of everything that you do, and just think it's amazing how you educate people, and all the time and effort that goes into doing that is, we know how hard it is, and you do it even better than us. And so we just love it. So thanks for allowing us to be part of this. And Kate, huge kudos to you working with Queenie behind the scenes and Pablo to get this up and running. So thank you so much. Yeah, superstar, obviously, but everyone knows that as well. So thanks, guys. If you want to get in touch with Queenie, you saw her email on the slide before, and you can reach out to Kate or I on social media as well. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight. So, Queenie, I'll leave it to you to sign off. But
exciting. Thank you so much. And hopefully see you in 2 weeks' time for another workshop. But thank you so much for joining us, and hope you have a lovely evening. It was so nice to chat. Thank you.